The judge cutting short opening statements from the man accused of trying to assassinate President Trump as he golfed in South Florida last year. Ryan Routh representing himself amid his trial, veering off topic during his opening statements, talking about Adolf Hitler and the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. U.S. District Judge Aileen Cannon warned him to stay on topic and asked jurors twice to leave the courtroom so she could deal with the unconventional turn in Routh's comments. Right now, because cameras are not allowed in, we just have artist renderings here, but both Routh and prosecutors have been given 40 minutes each to make opening statements, but Routh's initial argument read from a written statement lasted less than 10 minutes before the judge said he had forfeited his right. During the prosecution's opening statement, the assistant U.S. attorney told jurors that Routh wanted to make sure that Trump was not reelected to the White House. Routh has pleaded not guilty to several charges. Now, prosecutors have said that Routh methodically plotted to kill Trump for weeks before aiming a rifle through the shrubbery at Trump at his golf course there as he was playing on September 15th of last year at his West Palm Beach Country Club. A Secret Service agent spotted Routh before Trump came into view, and officials said Routh aimed his rifle at the agent who opened fire, causing Routh to drop his weapon and flee without firing a shot. There is so much to discuss here, so I do want to bring in Dan Garrell, former prosecutor, now criminal defense attorney. He's the founder and managing partner at Next Law. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
You're welcome, and good morning, Josh.
Good morning. Well, obviously a bizarre situation during the opening statements as Routh is representing himself in the trial, which has obviously been a topic that's been discussed a lot. Before we get into all of this, explain to me some of the pros and cons here of him representing himself during this trial.
Well, there are no pros. It's all con. I think it's going to seal his fate. It's already backfiring. We've seen this with his opening statements and his failure in the first day of testimony to properly cross-examine the government's witnesses. And I think as this trial continues, he's going to miss legitimate objections. He's going to let in evidence that a skilled attorney might be able to exclude. He's not going to be able to effectively counter the prosecution's strongest points, and he's going to alienate the jury. So it's a lose-lose.
And we heard, as I mentioned, that the judge actually did cut off those opening statements, said that he had forfeited his right to even hold those opening statements, and the jury asked to leave 2 different times during that. How tightly is this trial being controlled right now by the judge?
Well, Judge Cannon is making it clear that she's not going to let this trial turn into a circus. She wants the jury to hear the evidence. She doesn't want them to hear a bunch of rants and ramblings about Hitler and the Wright brothers and Ukraine. And I think she's intent on keeping a tight grip on the proceedings. And by shutting his opening statement down in just 5 minutes, she's making it clear that if he continues to wander off topic, she's going to have no problem cutting him off.
How strong would you say the evidence of intent, with prosecutors calling this a carefully crafted and deadly serious plot, pointing to weeks of planning there, burner phones, a rifle on Trump's golf course? How strong is that evidence of intent?
Yeah, I mean, I think so far they're making the compelling case. That's the main thing that the prosecution has to establish to prove this case, is that this was an act, that this act was the result of careful planning, and that it wasn't just some spontaneous action. The prosecution has already started to put together a picture of that careful planning. They presented evidence that Routh spent weeks surveying this area, that he used up to, I think it was 12 burner phones to track Trump's movements, and the evidence of that loaded rifle that was found hidden near the golf course. All of this tilts hard towards deliberate premeditation, and it suggests methodical preparation, which is going to be very powerful in the eyes of the jury.
How important does it matter that a gunshot was never fired by Routh? As we mentioned, a Secret Service agent talked there about the fact that he did have the rifle pointed right at him, and he was very close to him at the time. So does it matter that a shot wasn't fired?
Well, I mean, certainly if there was evidence that a shot was fired, that would just be that much more compelling evidence. But in this case, I don't think it really matters that much. I think that the Secret Service agent's testimony was devastating for Routh's case. And I think his testimony paints a picture of somebody staring down the barrel of a rifle painted right at them from 5 feet away. I mean, that's cinematic, and it personalizes that witness for the jury. He's not just a trained agent and witness for the government. He's a flesh and blood human being, just like them. And he's giving them a window into what he saw and what he went through. And it takes the concept of attempt, which otherwise might be somewhat abstract for the jury, and it makes it very real and very tangible.
And there is a witness who said that he chased Routh's car and wrote down the license plate. How important is that kind of corroboration for prosecutors, going to this witness who is there testifying and saying, I followed him. This is definitely who we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's just equally devastating for the defense. Now we've got somebody who has no skin in the game. You know, he doesn't work for the president. He's not an expert hired by the government. He could easily be one of the jurors himself. And there's no reason for them to not credit his testimony and believe what he says he saw. And that just further ties Routh to every other piece of evidence that's been presented.
My last question for you here. What larger stakes do you see when it comes to presidential security, courtroom decorum, the right to self-representation? I mean, a lot of different topics here that are up in the air and have been discussed as a result of all of this.
Right. Well, this trial is much bigger than Routh. It is about several of those things that you mentioned. It's about the security of political figures in a time that clearly is one of increasing political divide and even political violence. And it's also about how the criminal justice system is going to balance two very important principles. One of them is the need for order in a high stakes trial where the defendant has chosen to represent himself, and he's doing so in such a bizarre and scattered manner, while at the same time balancing the need for protecting that same defendant's rights against the government and his presumption of innocence.
All right, Dan Garrell, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. This is going to be a trial that we watch closely. Sadly, as we've mentioned in the past, cameras not allowed in the courtroom for this, so we're not getting the footage, but reporters are in there and they're providing some of the details pretty quickly as they're coming out so we can report them. Anything we missed, anything you want to add before I let you go?
Well, you know, I've been thinking about the fact that this jury, to my knowledge, is not sequestered. And it's hard to imagine that there isn't exposure to what happened this week with Charlie Kirk. You know, they're certainly ordered by the judge probably ordered to not go on to social media or go on to the internet at all, but specifically to not do any research on the case for which they have been seated. That doesn't mean that they're completely oblivious to what happened this week. And it's hard for me to imagine that over the next few weeks, that is not somehow going to bleed into what's going on in this trial. So I'm really interested and curious to see whether or not that becomes an issue as this trial moves forward.
Yeah, because there's no way that you can even look at your phone at this point or talk to another person who isn't mentioning it. So that is a very good point to bring up, that could factor into all of this as well. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. We appreciate it as always.
You're welcome, Josh.